You may have noticed throughout many of his letters that Paul often refers to running the race. Maybe that's because NASCAR hadn't been invented yet. But comfort can trip up a runner just as easily as a race car. Paul also talks about comfort in our passage today from 2 Timothy. But it's not in the context of winning a race. It's in the context of fighting a battle. A soldier on duty doesn't go shopping at the marketplace. He concentrates on carrying out orders. He's interested in pleasing his commanding officer, or at the very least, interested in avoiding a dishonorable discharge. God is looking for those kinds of people. God is looking for soldiers. If you were to put out an advertisement, perhaps it would be similar to the one the Marines put out in 1985. Do you remember that iconic advertisement campaign saying they were looking for a few good men? God is also looking for a few good men and women. And what is it specifically that he's looking for in these men and women? Well, the answer to that, or rather a clue to the answer, I think, is in a scene from the aptly titled movie, A Few Good Men. A 1992 film starring Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. Perhaps you might have seen it, and if you haven't, perhaps you want to put it next on your list right after Alive. But if you did see it, you might remember the scene I'm about to describe. I really wanted to show it to you this morning, but there was a little too much foul language for me to contend with. But in this movie, two Marines are accused of murdering another Marine, and the plot centers around the attorneys who are working to prove that the Marines on trial were only following orders from their superior officers when they did what they did. But one of the attorneys on the case isn't so enthusiastic about using this excuse as a defense. And there's a line from this memorable scene that got stuck in my head as a teenager, and it's kept coming back to me over and over again through the years. One of the other attorneys asks him regarding their clients, "Why do you hate them so much?" And he replies, "They beat up on a weakling. That's all they did. The rest of this is just smoke-filled coffee house rubbish. They tortured and tormented a weaker kid. And why? Because he couldn't run very fast. The rest of this is just smoke-filled coffee house rubbish." I think that line has stuck with me through the years because there's something in the way my mind works that enjoys cutting through whatever is extraneous to get to the heart of the matter, whatever the matter is, whatever the subject may be. Whenever it's possible, I like to just cut to the chase. Don't distract me with all that smoke-filled coffee house rubbish. I want to know what the bottom line is. Or maybe it stuck with me because in our culture, it increasingly seems like we're all caught up in a lot of things that aren't that important. Whatever the reason, it was this line that popped into my head as I read the second chapter of Paul's second letter to Timothy. "Endure suffering along with me as a good soldier of Christ Jesus." Soldiers don't get tied up in the affairs of civilian life, for then they cannot please the officer who enlisted them. For soldiers who set their sights on the goal of being the best warriors they can be, many of the trappings of the civilian life are just smoke-filled coffee house rubbish, unnecessary distractions. Soldiers have to give up a lot in order to do their jobs well. They must give up their hobbies, their pride, and their independence. They must give up their family and friends, at least to the extent that they can't enjoy social life as a normal civilian would. They have to strip all the creature comforts out of their lives, just as race car drivers have to strip away the leather seats, the air conditioning, and the state-of-the-art sound systems from their cars. Soldiers sacrifice not only what is bad, but many things that would qualify as good or even ideal. They sacrifice anything and everything that would distract them from their ultimate purpose. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with having a family, and many soldiers do. But no soldier wants to take his 3-year-old out on the battlefield with him. Thus, he will have to sacrifice a certain amount of time with those he loves, both for the sake of their safety and for the sake of his mission. In the same way, God is looking for soldiers, for people who can appreciate the bigger picture of what's happening in his universe and live accordingly. He's looking for people who can understand the importance of not being distracted by all the smoke-filled coffee house rubbish. Because whether we're aware of it or not, we live in a world that's at war. In fact, it's a universe at war. We live on a spiritual battlefield. And the primary enemy in this war is described in 1 Peter 5 as a lion. Be self-controlled and alert, Peter writes. For your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith. Our enemy prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. You ever think about that as you're going through your day? Just imagine if you lived in Grand Rapids and the John Ball Zoo announced that their 2 male lions had escaped and were prowling around the city looking for a meal. How aware would you be of your surroundings as you walked from the grocery store to your car? How on guard would you be as you went about your daily business? Until officials announced that those lions had been recaptured, you would probably be thinking about them a good deal of the time. But how often do we stop to think about the fact that we actually have an enemy who's waiting for the right opportunity to pounce? How often do we stop to think about the fact that we live in a war zone? I would say, not that often. Instead, we spend most of our time distracted by the world, caught up in the trappings of our lives, chasing after our next moment of comfort and pleasure. But the reality of what is going on in the world we live in is something far more incredible and disturbing than we tend to consider on a daily basis. Perhaps that's why Paul's language in Ephesians 6 sounds so epic to us. This is no afternoon athletic contest that we'll walk away from and forget about in a couple of hours, he writes. This is for keeps. A life or death fight to the finish against the devil and all his angels. Be prepared. You're up against far more than you can handle on your own. Wow. At the Bible study after last week's service, we got to talking about about suffering for the gospel, because Paul often writes about this in his letters, how he's suffering for the gospel. We talked about that and whether we have any idea what that's like, particularly in this country, where we still enjoy freedom of religion. The answer is probably no. We haven't been persecuted for our faith in recent days. But there are plenty of places in the world where Christians are being persecuted for their faith. And if the Bible is accurate, we may be in the same boat with them someday soon. And when that happens, when the world gets overwhelming and it seems like there's chaos and confusion on all sides, I think we will be able to see right through all that smoke-filled coffee house rubbish. We will suddenly realize what's really important in this life. But we don't have to wait for the world to fall around us, to fall apart, before we enlist in God's special army. He's looking for people right now who have their eyes fixed on the prize. He is looking for people right now who aren't just living for what's perishable, but what's permanent. He's looking for people right now who can drill down to the heart of the matter and remember what's important in this life. For there's only one thing worth having in this life, and that's God. If you have Him and nothing else, you have everything. And those aren't just words. If you have Him and nothing else, you have everything. If you have everything else and not Him, you have nothing. So no matter what's happening in your life today, don't get so caught up in the smoke-filled coffee house rubbish that you miss out on what's really important. And what's really important is whose side you're on. Because God would fight this war on His own, but He doesn't want to. He wants you with Him, and not for His sake, but for yours. He wants you to join Him, to take all the help He's promised, so that when this epic battle is over, when it's all over but the shouting, you'll still be on your feet. God is looking for a few good men and women who are willing to leave the coffee house behind, to trade comfort for combat, and to go deeper with Him than ever before. I'll tell you what, I want to be one of them, and I hope you